As a new decade began on the DePauw campus, a new symbol was put in place. The ornamental gateway which leads to East College was a gift of the class of 1890 at their 20th reunion in 1910. At Wabash, a 4-0 start by the football team, all wins by shutout, came to a sudden and tragic end when Ralph "Sap" Wilson died from injuries he sustained in the Little Giants' win over St. Louis. While football continued to be played at DePauw, Wabash canceled the rest of its season. The question etched on Wilson's tombstone would have to wait another year for an answer. In October of 1911, the rivalry resumed, with DePauw supporters offered a $1 train ticket to see the Friday game in Crawfordsville. The story was what did not happen. Wabash's Skeet Lambert uncharacteristically missed all 7 drop kicks he attempted, and with time expiring, his teammate Ralph Markle was hit and fumbled the ball 3 yards away from the goal line. DePauw coach Cotton Burnt cheered as his team recovered the loose pigskin, sealing another scoreless outcome. In September 1912, as a new school year began, George Richmond Groves was appointed DePauw's 10th president. A month later, alumni who returned to the university for Old Gold Day at McKean Field went home stunned. Wabash quarterback Skeet Lambert was a one-man wrecking crew, scoring 5 touchdowns, and was successful on a like number of extra points. His brother Ward, also a Wabash man, would later coach Purdue to 11 Big Ten basketball titles. Raymond Williams added 3 TDs of his own. One went 60 yards, another 50. DePauw never came close to the goal line. Wabash's 5-2 season was the last for Coach Jesse Harper, who left to take the reins of Notre Dame's football program and brought the forward pass to the Fighting Irish just in time for Newt Rockne's senior year. On October 7, 1913, Henry Ford launched the first large-scale moving assembly line to produce his Model T. College students had something else to celebrate that fall. 13 days later, an excursion train took DePauw fans to Crawfordsville for an early season battle between Coach Tom Bogle's 1-1-1 Tigers and the 0-1-1 Little Giants. The crowd was described as large and loud. It engaged in a howling contest before the opening kickoff. They played in raw, windy weather conditions and for the first time on a Monday. In the second quarter, DePauw had a 4th down on Wabash's 10-yard line. Halfback Gordon Thomas grabbed a delayed pass, scampered toward pay dirt, but was hit as he reached the goal line and fumbled the football. 5 Scarlet players made a dive for the precious bounty, but Tiger fullback Hank Rowan gathered it in for the game's lone score. It was the first triumph for the Black and Gold since 1901. University of Michigan fans who held a 1914 season ticket package were among 5,100 people who saw a season opener pitting the Maize and Blue against the Tigers from DePauw. The result, as the New York Times noted, was a 58-0 drubbing fueled by a spate of successful trick plays by the Wolverines. All-American halfback John Malbesh, a future college football Hall of Famer, starred for the home team. Led by Captain Gordon Thomas, DePauw entered the Wabash game with a 3-4 record, while their foes were 5-1. Another Monday afternoon game, this battle at McKean Field was scoreless until the 4th quarter, and the game-breaker was DePauw halfback Hank Rowan. His drop kick from the 25-yard line late in the game was the difference, as DePauw shut out its rivals for a second consecutive year. Six months after the 5th Indianapolis 500, which took more than 5.5 hours to complete and an average speed of 89 miles per hour, fans of the Wabash-DePauw football rivalry looked to the capital city as a new host for their game. The idea was moving the contest to Indy would allow more fans to attend. DePauw's student newspaper called upon lusty-voiced supporters to show up in large numbers. And And as became a tradition, a large contingent marched through downtown Indianapolis west to Washington Park. A reserved seat was $2, a buck less than it cost to see the World Series that fall. In an article summarizing the 1915 game, the DePauw wrote, "The less that is said, the better." It was 13-0 Wabash through 3 quarters, but in his one and only year as the Tigers' head coach, Ralph Young watched the Bengals get mauled by the undefeated Little Giants. As the headline reads, 34-0 was the final pileup. "1916 brought changes to the DePauw campus as groundbreaking was held for a new women's dormitory, Rector Hall, and the university dedicated its brand new Bowman Gymnasium. Wabash fans were giddy coming off a win in the big game the year before, and they were building for the future with a team that featured freshman right tackle Raymond "Gaumy" Neal. 4 days after Woodrow Wilson was narrowly re-elected president, fans of both teams gathered in Indianapolis for the annual grudge match. They marched downtown. This is the Wabash contingent, here's DePauw's, and they produced plenty of noise for a game that newspapers predicted would be a battle to remember. Both squads came to Washington Park with 4-2 records, but on this day, Wabash fullback Francis Bacon provided the sizzle. He scored 3 touchdowns in a back-and-forth struggle that ended with the Little Giants winners by 13. On April 6, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson signed the bill formally declaring war against Germany, and the United States entered the conflict in Europe. 6 months later, women's suffragists paraded down New York's Fifth Avenue, carrying the signatures of 1 million females demanding the right to vote. Also that fall, DePauw dedicated its new women's dormitory, Rector Hall, and the faculty considered a plan to hold classes 6 days a week. This is an actual stub from the 1917 DePauw-Wabash football game, and a $1.50 seat at Washington Park in Indianapolis provided a view of a tough battle. A first-quarter 15-yard touchdown pass from DePauw's Dick Wheat to Joe Royce and a successful extra point summed up the day's scoring, although a later Wabash drive was stopped at the 1-yard line. In the fall of 1918, student army training continued on college campuses like DePauw's as the Great War in Europe was winding down. But a new threat arrived, a worldwide influenza pandemic which peaked in late October and eventually killed more than 60 million people across the globe, including more than 500,000 Americans, exceeding the nation's total casualties in World War I. Health-related bans on public assemblies meant many football games were canceled, and restrictions in Indianapolis forced the 1918 DePauw-Wabash contest to be moved to Crawfordsville. On November 11th in Greencastle's town square, a huge crowd celebrated Armistice Day, the symbolic end of the war. 12 days later, trains delivered fans to Wabash for a game described by the Indianapolis Star as a walloping. In this skirmish, an early touchdown run by Buddy O'Neill got DePauw rolling. He later returned an interception 60 yards for a score. An abbreviated season ends with a 28-6 Tiger victory. It was the year DePauw welcomed its first Rector Scholars, and which spotlighted 2 future legends. Pete Vaughn became Wabash's head coach. His star player, senior Raymond "Gaumy" Neal, would later become the opposing coach in this rivalry, and students made no bones about it. Even then, a look up or down the Monon line could get them carried away. Tiger fans who made the road trip to Indianapolis for the 1919 game gathered on Monument Circle for a sizable rally before parading to Washington Park. A treasure trove of images are available from the contest, which drew a crowd of 7,000 to the stadium just west of downtown. But the scoreboard operators saw no action. The closest either team came to scoring was when DePauw's Harold Galloway returned a punt 60 yards and was pulled down at the Wabash 30. The story and the team's seasons don't end there. There was a post-game dance downtown. Health problems incapacitated DePauw head coach Edward Buss, and 4 alumni from Indianapolis, including the city's mayor, Charles Jewett, took over the football team for the remainder of the season, which ended with a 2-5-1 record. Wabash's football annual summarized a 4-3-2 campaign.